Welcome to this session of the 2025 Northwest Interlibrary Loan and Resource Sharing Conference. Today's date is September 11th, 2025. This session is titled AI and ILL, and it's comprised of two sub-sessions that are pre-recorded with a live one of them's pre-recorded, sorry, with a live Q&A. So the first session is called Using AI to Help Build and Refine ILLiad Routing Rules by Amy Chu, who is from University of Tennessee Libraries. And the second presentation is ChatGPT Hallucinations, Complicating ILL Requests by Chelsea Eidbo, and she is Eidbo, sorry. She's with Rosalind Franklin University of Medicine and Science in North Chicago, Illinois. And my name is Summer, and I'm the convener for this session. Please let us know if you can't hear or can't see the shared screen. This session is being recorded with permission from the presenters. We plan to make these recordings available once captions have been added. Expect an email from Whova when the recordings have been posted, and that should be about 3 weeks after the conference. We'll take questions at the end of each presentation from in the room and virtually. Our virtual colleagues should post questions on the Whova Q&A tab. And don't forget to fill out the post survey after this session. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Amy. Well, all right, well.
Hello, this is Amy Chu. This is using AI to help build and refine your routing rules. I wanted to let you know the tool that I used for this project was Google Gemini Pro 2.5. And at the time I began testing these sort of routing rules, I had access to a 1-year subscription for this content that I obtained freely by using my .edu email address. Regardless of what large language model you choose to work with, the process should be fairly similar no matter how you're attacking it. You want to start with an idea. What is something you want to accomplish in terms of the type of work you're hoping to do in creating a routing rule and how that will apply from one to the other? And your LLM is not the expert here. You're going to need to feed it some examples. So if you have, if you can look up in your ILLiad customization manager your own routing rules that you already use, you could give it some of those as examples. You also might want to look at outside documentation, like things from Atlas or other organizations that might mention routing rules. You can even ask your large language model to find such documentation, and it may be able to do so with varying results. But ultimately, you're the expert here. You're the one who needs to let them know how to do it. You're not only taking the horse to water, you got to teach it to drink a little bit too. And I'll show you some examples later of why that's important. Finally, though, as you're working on this and you're getting at ideas, you are going to have to give it a little bit of redirection and refine some of the suggestions that it gives you. And that's fine. And also, as you go, you may have new ideas about how to make things more efficient or change up an option in the field to see what you want to have as a success there. And then hopefully you'll end up with a fruitful, testable rule that you can go on from there. One thing I really do want to note is make sure you save your work as you go, or you might end up in a situation like me where stuff just disappeared on me. I had conversations that led to some great routing rules that Google just yeeted away, and it disappeared like sands through the hourglass. So this is an example of a conversation that I had with Gemini, specifically to create a routing rule. This was not the first conversation I had with Gemini about routing rules, but as I said before, some of my earlier content, which is actually what prompted this presentation, ended up being deleted on me, and I had not backed that up in any meaningful way that I was able to share it with you and like this. I have backed up this conversation. As of this recording, the sharing link is working, and that will be shared with you so you can go through this at your leisure. I'm just going to go through a few points here. So the first thing I did was considered what problem I wanted to solve, and somebody in one of the listservs had talked about needing a routing rule to route materials to a queue once distance patrons had been notified that the material was ready for them, but before it was actually checked out to them, presumably to give them time to double check that the address on file was correct, etc. So I tried to write that clearly to Gemini. Help me write an ILLiad routing rule that will send all books received for distance education patrons to a new queue after they've been notified, but before being checked out. And then Gemini takes some time to think about things, and you can view its thinking, but this is the output that it gave me. So it's always very polite. It's going to craft the rule. It's giving me some options here. It's assuming some things about distance patrons. That's fine. I did not give it a lot of direction yet, but this is going to start with an idea. I'll also provide a bit of coding to show me what rule it came up with. And it goes through some more explanations about the content. It even got very specific about how I should add the routing rule, which can be helpful if you aren't entirely sure how that whole process works. And suggestions on how to test, which is a great idea. However, we need to remember that we are working with a large language model. The purpose of this is to have a conversation with you. Sometimes it will tell you things that will help flow the conversation along, but may not be entirely accurate. So the first thing that I noticed when I was looking at this potential routing rule was the field for user status. So they used u.userStatus, which is not correct. Like that is not a field used in ILLiad. So I let them know user status not an ILLiad field. I provided it with some documentation about all the field names that are found in ILLiad database tables, and then told them which one I think is most likely correct instead. So as you're going through, if you notice something isn't working as expected, double check against documentation, against your own knowledge, against the way routing rules are set up. It can give you ideas, but you do need to refine them. So it always apologizes. And then fixes it by adding the correct u status instead of u.userStatus, use status. And then, of course, it fills in your distance ed status value because that's going to vary from place to place. And it provides an updated explanation, implementation steps, etc. Now, as you're going, you think, well, maybe I want to try something else. Maybe I should use the loan delivery method instead of the user status. Have it catch on mailed address. How would that look? And they provide that as a potential option. And then I provided another suggestion, maybe loan delivery method rather than transaction shipping options. And it gives an explanation about why that might not be the best one to use. That was actually very helpful. And we decided that distance status is a better identifier than mailed address. So refined it down a little more, asked if we could change the correct field to contains distance. So like here at UT, all of our distance students have distance in their stats. So it would be like undergrad distance or graduate distance or staff distance or faculty distance. And so rather than having all of those show up in the line, we can condense it down that as long as the user status contains the word distance, then that can make the rule a little more compact. So they figured that out, like distance, which means it contains distance. And see, that's the thing. Like, I don't know SQL or SQL or whatever they call it. My husband jokes that I'm just vibe coding when I do stuff like this, but it's really helpful because I don't have the time necessarily to learn all of this from scratch. So this is how these tools, I feel, can be useful. But again, you need to double check things, keep an eye on stuff, make sure it matches up with documentation that exists. So we continued our conversation. And then they had been including the cues in the match string. I reminded them that that's not how that works. In the match string, the Rowdy Rules table, you put the cues in separate fields, cells in that table, and then the match string itself is in its own separate cell in that table. It's always very complimentary. It feels a little disingenuous, but you know, it's hard not to anthropomorphize these sort of tools when it feels like they're talking to you. And then I went on to have it review routing rule structure, documentation provided by Atlas, so that it could be sure to format it correctly. Before you put your brand new baby tools out into the world, you need to make sure you're testing them pretty thoroughly. So a couple ways you might consider doing that is by creating a testing queue so that anything that triggers on this rule will route to a specific queue. Or you can include, yourself as a user. You could add username to the match string so that only requests that you place will go through and test on this rule. And then additionally, this was Lapis Cohen's idea when I shared some of my original rules with him. He came back with a spreadsheet that he'd created of how he was testing the rules, what he was doing for each test, and different ways to try and break and check them. So I recommend you do the same if you are going to be testing new rules. One more thing that I wanted to share with you all is another conversation that I had with Gemini. And in this case, I asked it to find and provide as many routing rules as it possibly could. And I tried to be very specific in that I asked it to make sure to include links to all of its sources so that I knew that the content it was providing wasn't just stuff that it was making up, but actually had links that I could verify and check back on. And then as I went through that and I kept prodding it for more, we finally got to a point where it said it could not find any more publicly available content, but then offered the option of hypothetical rules that could be created in the same style. And so I asked it then also to provide some additional hypotheticals and feeding it this sort of documentation and then asking for it to extrapolate and build upon that. And from there, you could add more ideas about what you have and what you want to accomplish. Can also be a good way to start or just a good way to help you build new ideas. Well, that's all I have for you today. These are links to those conversations I highlighted. Looking forward to hearing what your own forays into AI and routing rules might be. Share the good ones with me and have a wonderful day.
Okay, great. We're going to have Amy live here, well, virtually to answer any questions. Are there any in the room right now? I do have one virtually. Does your institution have any rules or procedures set up to determine which organizational documents you're allowed to feed into LLMS? Essence?
This is Amy. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yes, but what I was feeding into it was just publicly available documentation. I have not dipped into using an AI LLM on potentially sensitive information at all. We do have a UT built AI tool that I haven't played with much, but I think I would reach out to counsel probably before I tackled anything that would have that sort of potentially sensitive or organizational specific information in it.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Question in the room, hold on.
Thank you, Amy. Great presentation. Does your institution have a policy on which AI tools you can use? Because my institution does. And do you think any other AI tool would be would work with what you showed us? Thank you.
We don't, I think, have any sort of limitations like that. The official campus policy is pretty much down to, and I'm not faculty or teaching, but that faculty can determine, what level of AI assistance or LLM assistance they will allow in their courses. And I think that also extends to staff as well. We don't have, as far as I know, any sort of restrictions, but I think the basic principles should be able to transfer in that if you are leading it along and double checking your work as you go, that any sort of LLM should work in this case. Yes. Sorry, I thought I heard someone say something.
No, you're good, Amy. I have
Okay.
another online question. What made you pick Gemini over ChatGPT? I'm sorry if you went over this and I just didn't hear.
It was just an of the moment thing. I saw that I had that free trial available to me. I thought I'd start playing with it. I think at the time it was supposed to be, real good with coding or whatever. So it just fell into my lap. And so that's why.
Great. Any more questions in the room? Okay. Thanks so much, Amy. I think we're going to move on now to Chelsea's presentation, and we'll load that up here in a minute.
Oh, no, she's doing. She's sharing her screen. Or Chelsea, are you sharing your screen with your presentation?
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
Okay, can everyone see my screen? If I
Go ahead and yes, we can.
if I move stuff, we can see
Yes,
it?
we can see your screen and we see it moving. Yep.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. I'm just making sure because the last 3 times I did this, I ended up sending it to the slideshow box that PowerPoint has. All right. Should I just get started or are we waiting a few minutes?
That'd be great, Chelsea, if you can just go ahead and start. Thank you.
Great. Well, my name is Chelsea Eidbo. I am the collection management librarian at Rosalind Franklin University. And I'm moving my camera because that's where the thing is. Oh crap. Of course. This is how it works. I don't have a camera anymore. Awesome.
That's okay. The main thing we need to see is your slides.
Yeah. All right. So I'm completely thrown. So I did a series of experiments using ChatGPT after we had two people come in asking about ChatGPT interlibrary loans. So the first one was actually a live chat with one of my coworkers who we talked about it ad nauseum. They asked for 7 articles. They had titles only, none of which existed, but they said that they'd reached out to Elsevier, and Elsevier said it would cost $1,200 to buy these articles from them. All of these articles were listed from open access journals according to their citations, which, yes, had the journal and the title, but no author, no metadata, no other stuff. All of those journals were open access. It was very strange, and we quickly came to the conclusion that they were, in fact, AI generated, and unfortunately, we could not help them get them. The second one was a person who came in to my office with a list of 15 articles that their research partner had given them to look up and see if they could find those articles. The person who brought them in could not find anything, and when I put them into Google and Google Scholar, I couldn't find anything either. But as I was looking at them, again, no author, no metadata at all, I just realized that they had the same kitschy information that was catchy phrase and that could sort of sound what they were looking for, but they were all exactly the same, which made me suspicious. And I asked at one point flat out, did these come from an AI generator? And he said, I don't think so. And then texted his work partner. And the work partner replied, one of them is definitely real. And I said, which one? Sure enough, that one was also not real. So this prompted me to start digging into how ChatGPT was creating stuff. So, because this whole thing could lead to, if people hadn't just come into our office or hadn't used our libchat function, they could have just submitted them using a blank interlibrary loan, which we make available because we don't have everything indexed. And it can create a lot of problems. And if the indexing sort of stuff gets mixed in with, or gets mixed up with ChatGPT, we could have a situation where our indexing is ruined, and then people are submitting what they think are real articles, but it's not. It's just AI slop, which isn't going to be great. And we already have misinformation in articles that are peer reviewed and still say this is a learning language model and does not have access to this information mid paragraph, which I've had report several times, unfortunately. So all of this led to me creating a methodology for when I was researching. I decided I would reset ChatGPT between each prompt so that it would not be able to riff off of what I had already worked on. I used incognito mode so it would not have access to previous searches if it ever figures out how to do that. And then my 3 prompts were create a citation list for articles about green tea, using green tea as the control, find citations for articles about green tea, and find citations for book chapters about green tea. And with that, I ran the first experiment. It gave me 8 results, and of those results, all of them were fake. But the formatting was for AP, it was close. It bolded the authors for some reason, but other than that, the formatting itself looked like it would pass muster. However, I quickly stopped giving it any grace after this experiment So here's a quick breakdown of all of the prompts or all of the answers I received. Obviously, the titles and authors and issues and links were either fake or didn't go anywhere, or went to the wrong article altogether. And the book chapters, instead of giving me book chapters, it gave me ancient historical Chinese texts, Wikipedia links from 300 CE to 1100 CE. And obviously, I could not actually verify that the article that it gave me was in fact the citation it gave me was in fact correct because everything was in Chinese. So now we go to experiment 2. Nope, wait, we couldn't go to experiment 2 because the first 3 prompts it gave me were just titles and occasionally a link. So we go to methodology round 2. I didn't want to ruin the original experiment, so I stuck with those 3 questions and then added 3 more, which was create an APA citation list for articles about green tea, find APA citations, and find for articles and find APA citations for book chapters, hoping that it would give me what I wanted. And to a certain extent, it did. The 4th and 5th tests produced a handful of real articles with some good links, some bad formatting. It also gave me 2 blog posts, one of which was deleted and one of which they grabbed the photographer's name instead of the author's name for the blog post, which I wouldn't have caught if I hadn't gone and checked every single thing. And then for the book chapters, it gave me 1 book chapter title with incorrect information, a book, and a real author who writes about green tea, and everything else about it was fake. So at this point, I'm a little stressed. So we go to experiment 3, and as you can see, it did not do well. When I asked for book chapters from the original subset of questions where I did not include APA citations, it gave me 3 books about green tea with no links. They were real titles, but no other information, so no citation. And then everything else pretty much was incorrect. And some of it, it was just such a mess. And I was like, okay. The only one that was real, which is sort of in that top sea of red, it had a bad link, but the rest of it was real. When you go to the page where it exists, it does have a how to cite section, which is probably why it has the information correct. So I thought that was nifty. Experiment 4 was very different. It provided a lot of real information and real articles, which was very curious. And so I started looking through it, and all of the links, like I think 95% of them, went to PubMed, which made me realize that at some point between June 18th and July 28th, ChatGPT had scraped PubMed, and now suddenly it was producing much more accurate information, which to a certain extent is interesting and also a little scary. However, it did still produce plenty of fake stuff when I asked for citations of books because PubMed does not have books on it particularly often. And fortunately, here endeth my jokes about experiments because I had to submit the documentation before the next one would be due. So here is my full breakdown. We had 146 answers from that were actual citations and not, or sorry, 146 of those 146, 62 were non-citations. 39 were real titles and 45 were fake titles. Of the 39 real titles, 1 was a duplicate that I came across in 2 different prompts. In the fake titles, 6 were duplicates, and 2 of those were actually done 3 times across different prompts. And in the fake titles, there were 99 authors, 26 were unique, 20 had family names that were duplicated, and 18 were duplicate authors altogether. You may notice that the in the middle section, you have Li, Leo, and Lu were used cumulatively 19 times. And Wang was used 9 times, and Zhang and Zhao were used cumulatively 9 times. Basu and Roan were both used 3 times, but that was because that was 3 duplicate authors, 3 duplicates on one title. The number of ones that were used Yang and Wang at the same time was unfortunate, and a lot of them just had Li, Leo, and Lu as the authors, and I was getting very concerned at that point, which led me down my first rabbit hole, which was microaggressions. I don't entirely know, because the only thing I can think is that because green tea originated in China, the fabricated citations decided to use mostly Chinese family names. I did very brief research, just looking at green tea, and the first 30 or so results had names from all over the world. My next one was that I realized, to my growing horror, that ChatGPT is essentially computerized improv. It will yes and you until you're happy with the result, and then match your energy. And finally, I also realized that the way I had phrased some of the methodology was that certain keywords, or that it was treating it like a keyword search, which means that other people are using it like a keyword search. And so when I was using certain phrasing like find APA citations, it was looking for literal APA citations that it could replicate, not necessarily creating them on its own, which is an interesting concept that I needed to chew on and am still working through. Finally, my first conclusion: is ChatGPT comprehensive enough for research? No. Most of the time, ChatGPT will give you between 4 and 10 results per query when I'm asking for different citations. And if you put green tea into PubMed, you get over 11,000 results. And if you put it into Google Scholar, you get 1.2 million. So it's not going to be super helpful when you're doing research or when you want to request interlibrary loans to forward that research, because it's just going to give you either fabricated information or the same 20 articles that it has given you before. The other part of ChatGPT is being helpful for ILL. It did improve its output, though part of that is likely because it now has access to PubMed. One of the interesting concerns is that open access journals and databases may curate their websites to make it easier for AI to find citations, since it did locate a couple that had how to cite sections, and of course PubMed allows you to cite in all sorts of formats. The major issue is that while titles can be real, often the information within it is fake. The formatting can be bad, the links can be wrong. You still have to check every single aspect of it, which kind of defeats the purpose of just using a citation machine or writing it yourself. And the fact that this will just keep coming up is going to be a long-term issue, I think. But in general, I think education is key on both sides, because we need to teach users how to properly I mean, I don't know if properly use ChatGPT is the answer, because it changes so often, but it will as long as the librarians can learn how to guide people either away from it entirely, or at least into using it functionally, I guess would be the best term, then that is what we need to do. We may also need to report indexing issues if ChatGPT starts indexing things correctly. And Finally, I did do some fun off-the-cuff testing for other stuff, just not in a report, just just glancing at it to see what would happen. I asked it to find citations on something a little more complex than green tea, and it gave me 6 results, and then at the bottom said, "These articles are fictional and should not be used other than as examples for how to uh, publish or for how to format citations," which was like, yeah, that's at the bottom in small text. Not great. But in any case, we're going to have to keep working with it because this is our new reality, and I am hopeful that we'll be able to develop better guidance in the future. So thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, that would be awesome.
Thanks so much, Chelsea. Do we have any questions in the room? Let me check online.
Don't see any online.
No, okay. There are no questions at this time, so we'll go ahead and end this session. Thank you for attending this session. Please complete the post-session survey in Whova, which you can access from this QR code or the link in the session chat. The link is also in the session description. The NWILL Planning Committee and our presenters appreciate your feedback. If you want to continue the conversation, you can use the chat within this session or the Whova community section. Thank you. Thanks, Amy and Chelsea.